All right, Hayden, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. This is out of the box
Pleasure.
conversation, something
Yeah,
completely different to what we normally do. So,
yeah,
you
it
want to
is, isn't it?
just for anyone listening, just give us a bit of a an overview of what we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah, well, I know where this normally when we're talking business strategy and supporting builders in the industry about how to be more profitable, more successful in their building life. But this was spurred when we were having one of those chats, and I was in America dealing with a bit of a personal grief scenario, and it just unraveled this discussion, didn't it? About wow, there's so many people just dealing with so much in this industry other than just profitability in their business.
Mm,
There's so many other factors. And then that's kind of where it spurred into you and I talking a bit more about creating some value and just being sharing our stories and then some insights and learnings that we've had along the way, and maybe knowing that that's a real topic that's that people need that type of insight equally, if not more than they do, how to manage a profit and loss sheet.
absolutely, man. Like you're spot on. There's so much information out there about how you run your business profitably, get the cash flow profit on
Mm,
the, firing.
mm,
But really, we all know like mindset is 70% of success. That's a big
mm.
component. And
Yeah.
then it's not a matter of if, it's when, right? Something's going to
Mm,
come at you from left field. Life's going to sort of punch you in the face,
yeah.
proverbially
Yeah.
speaking. And we've all had it happen. So
Mm,
I think, yeah, we spoke off air how we can share some of our own stories,
yep.
things that we've been through, and then how we, coped or
Yeah.
what we did to cope. And
Yeah.
I think it's something that isn't talked about enough. Like
Yeah.
and if we did talk about it more, people may have some solutions, right, for how to deal with something left field that something comes at you. And we're talking about like divorce,
Mm,
financial strain, pressure,
yeah.
bankruptcy,
Yeah.
death, all these heavy, heavy shit that comes at some point.
Yeah.
And if you're not equipped to handle it from a mindset perspective,
Mm,
it can, yeah, it can hit pretty hard.
yeah. For sure. And I know you come from the same position with this, Kurt, and as I do. I am not a by any means a guru or a life coach on any of this sort of stuff. But and there are tools out there, right? Like I think it really is becoming better resourced and more accessible, being able to find podcasts or programs that are actually helping the industry talk about issues and talk about personal problems. But there's not enough because some of the statistics related to mental health in the industry are pretty scary. So yeah,
Yeah.
whatever we can do in the simplest and sincere way to get people talking about stuff and be
Yeah.
open, I think hopefully there's some value in that for everyone.
Absolutely, man. But you're spot on. Like there is good information out there. You've got to seek it out though, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
for me, if anyone listening to this, if all they do is seek out the right advice, counseling, guidance, um,
mm,
community, even,
yeah,
then that's going to be a win.
mm,
Because like when I went through a divorce, I was I've been through two actually, right? I'll admit to that. The second one, they were far apart. It was only 12 years apart. But the second one, and I'm a bit of an armchair psychologist, right? Like you, read a lot of
mm,
books, listen to podcasts and things. So I really went looking for, where is there a community of guys that are going through the same thing? Because when you're going through a divorce or, worse like death, and they're actually quite similar things in terms of the grieving process, it feels like the world's moving without you, right? Like you're
yeah,
just experiencing this heavy grief and you're going through this process and you're pretty much on your own. So I was like, hey, there must be like on this planet, there's 8 billion people. There must be
mm,
like how many other guys going through exactly the same thing? And I was able to find a number of communities and then lock in or engage with one that was like really high quality. And
mm,
it was fascinating to see, to be in a community with like 1,000 or more people or guys, mainly
mm,
guys, all going through the same thing,
mm,
often. quoting their wives as saying the same thing. I found that fascinating. Like different
Interesting.
countries and nationalities. I mean, hey, my wife said this, and and I think that's a reflection of social media and what's happening online. So
Right.
there's these, I mean, that's a different story. We'll get into this in more detail a bit later in our
Yeah.
conversation with how I handled it. But
Mm.
there is, there has never been better access to information and quality help in communities out there to
Sure.
guide you through whatever you're going through, right? Whether it's financial, relationship wise, or whatever else. So I'd
Mm.
encourage anyone, if you're struggling with something, just know, like you're just one, step away from tapping into a
Yeah.
community that can totally relate to and understand what you're going through and have a process solution, which again we'll get into later. But
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah,
suppose
for
that's
sure.
the key message with all of this. But we're going to share a few of our own stories, right? Just to
Yeah. Yep.
let people
For
know
sure.
that we are, yeah, we are absolutely human and not,
Mm.
just everything goes well for us.
Mm. Yeah. So I think yeah, you're bang on. Like, just if anyone gets one thing out of this is that whatever you're experiencing, somebody else in the world is experiencing it as well. So it's not, but at the moment when you're in the midst of a stressful or grief moment, whatever it may be, when you're in the midst of that moment, it does feel like you're the only person in the world.
Yeah,
That's the truth of it. But just encourage anybody. There are other people going through stuff, and reaching out is a big part of it.
mm.
But
So I'll
like I
just,
think I was just going to draw attention, like the
mm,
reality of some of the statistics mean you have to reach out because there's
yeah,
the suicide rates in the construction industry are pretty
yeah,
scary. The number of mental health claims related to, I looked up this statistic just as a try to educate myself a little bit about some of this, but the number of rising mental health claims for men has risen by 97% over the last decade. A
yeah.
crazy number.
It's
So,
it's yeah, and it's sad. Like
mm,
it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
mm,
That's what I've heard. And besides the world moving without you, if you're going through a difficult time, which often
mm,
like it's financial plus relationship. Like I had an event once where there was only
mm,
20, 25 guys in the room. Three guys came up to me after my presentation and then said their wives just left them. And it's
mm,
because they were working 80, 100-hour weeks and not making
right.
much money. There wasn't much. So the wives were like, well, I'm out of here. Like hypergamy
Mm,
is a real thing. So not only do they have this financial pressure, they running on a hamster wheel, burnt out.
yep.
Now their wife's gone, I'll see you later, taking the kids and the house sort of thing.
Brutal.
And for a lot of
Brutal.
guys, that's just too much. But the reality is, like, whatever you're going through, and this is, we'll get into our personal situations. Like,
Sure.
sometimes it feels like it's never ever going to end, like the grieving, the financial pressure, whatever it is, but it will. It
Mhm.
does. There's even
Yeah.
a phrase, like, I'm not religious, but I think there's a biblical phrase, uh, this too shall end, something like that.
Oh,
You'll
yeah.
come back. I read one of Trump's books years ago, not to trigger people, but he spoke about that. Like he was in 160 million in the hole or something. And he said
Mm.
it was like that for 7 years. And he said it can feel like that's going to be the rest of your life, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
It has to end at some point, provided
So
you've
true.
got a process solution and you keep walking that path, eventually
Yeah.
come out of it. Same as grieving, eventually ends,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a process.
Very, very true. But hard to see it when you're in the midst of it. But it's a
Mm.
good lesson to be reminded of that it does see itself through somewhere or another.
Yeah,
Mm.
and that's why it's good to be around people that are going through a similar thing and maybe slightly ahead of you as well. And you can see
Mm.
how, yeah, it does. Like so, running with a permanent solution to a temporary problem, it's not it's not the way to go. But
It's I've had funny analogy related to that, Kurt. I'll always like to talk in analogies in the building industry, but imagine pouring a slab, right?
yeah,
You got you bent over, you got your your knee deep or your ankle deep in concrete, your
mm,
head's bent over, your ass is in the air, you can't see what's around you, but because you're pouring a slab, right?
mm,
But what you're actually doing is building a house, and the house is the end game.
Yeah.
And you know that if you just keep working through that slab and then step off to the side at some point,
Mm.
the house will get built. So a little analogy that I thought of that sort of relates to that exact point, that when you're in the moment, all you can see is the the concrete in front of you, or the bum crack of the bloke who's working next to you. But in
Yeah.
reality, what you're working towards is just delivering something beautiful for someone else and yourself, you know?
I love it. That's a great analogy.
Mm.
So just to give people some context of what we're talking about, like, so this is all about leadership. It's mindset, right? Like your
Yeah,
mindset is the thing, and your leadership is the thing that's going to get you through hardships in life. And I was talking to a guy just yesterday, like it doesn't matter how heavy the situation or hardship is, there will be a silver lining, right?
sure.
Like my dad died in front of me, right?
Mm,
And looking back, like, obviously brutal. Like, and he was a lovely guy, right? Like I've been
mm,
in, I do a lot of courses like Seminar Junkie, and I've seen, guys, 80, 90% of guys like had this difficult relationship with their dads, like
right.
it's father-son relationship. And I was like, fuck, my dad
Mm,
was just like this loving, kind, awesome guy, like my
that's
hero when I was
awesome.
a kid. Yeah.
Mm,
So when he passed, it was brutal, but then he died in front of me. It was 2 or 3 in the morning. My brother was there, my sister was there, my mother was there. He died at home.
mm,
We got to spend 2 days with him before. He had cancer.
mm,
And I'm grateful that there's people that die suddenly, unexpectedly, there's endless ways that can happen where they don't get to say goodbye. And I know someone, the last words to their partner was like, screw you. And then they never saw them again. So from
yeah.
that perspective, looking back, wow, I'm grateful that I was able to do that. Plus, I could carry forward the things that he taught me with my kids, and then
Mm,
honor his surname and then use that as motivation and drive. So there's always I mean, even in that scenario, there's a silver
sure.
line. And anyone that's lost a loved one would know what I'm talking about. Like over time, once you get through the grieving process,
Yeah,
you look back and smile, right? So
yeah.
yeah, that's a cool thing.
Mm.
But it's not, I mean, we're going straight into the heavy shit straight off the bat. But, for some guys, it's just working the long hours, like 80, 90 hours a week,
Yeah,
not making the money they want to. It's impacting their relationship. And then that's like, how do I get out of this situation? What's the solution here? But we're gonna
yeah,
share some of the things that we learned,
yeah.
and our struggles. Do you want to maybe go through? Like, do you want to share something that you've
We,
had to deal with, and then you were able to manage it?
yeah, well, yeah, for sure. Like, you know, as everybody does through the course of their life, you get thrown curveballs. But I think, starting on that practical level of like job site and building business wise, I haven't always been an estimator. I did run a building company for a long time, and when at that phase of my life, we were starting a young family, and that was hard work, and we weren't really making much money, and you're dealing with learning how to deal with clients and manage a contract, and it was bloody stressful, like really, really stressful. And one of the things when that I found the most challenging through that period was being able to be present when I came home, um, as opposed and leave all that shit, because you got these beautiful young kids run up to you and go, "Daddy," you're right. That's a pretty easy way to forget about work, but it's still really tricky sometimes when you're feeling that pressure and that stress to just drop the bullshit that you've been in dealing with on site, and be present and real and engaging when you are at home. That
So,
was a big challenge for me,
so just on
learning.
that, so I know that some people have the ability, and this is a leadership trait that some people have, and you can develop it to
Mm,
compartmentalize. In fact,
mm,
I think the special forces, they get trained to compartmentalize, right? Like they put it in a
yeah.
box. They can't deal with, see someone die in front of them. They can't.
Hmm.
They've got to put it in a box, and some
Yeah.
guys can do that when they get home from work, and then be present that way.
Mm.
How are you able to deal with that? And are you naturally good at that, or did you have to develop the skill?
I totally had to learn it, and I'm lucky in those early phases that my wife and I have got a pretty strong relationship. But man, there was some conflict, definitely some conflict that we had to learn and grow through.
Mm.
And it was combined with the fact that my wife, managing three young, gorgeous kids, managing that and the family life, she was also doing the books for the business. So there was this added stress of like we weren't making a heck of a lot of money, let alone the books weren't getting done frequently enough to know where we were at. So it was all this that was a combined stress.
Yeah.
But I one of the things that I really had to learn, and it was really challenging for me, and I'm calling myself out here, was like I'm a bit of a neat freak. And
Okay.
and and on a job site, I would literally vacuum up daily. I wouldn't sweep, I would vacuum daily because I just believed in tidiness because I was always doing renos and being
Yeah.
in someone's home. So that was important, right?
Yeah.
Um, so,
I've
I
seen
had,
people do that though when they stress, they clean, and then it's
yeah,
like a form of therapy, right?
yeah. And what I learned pretty rudely and quickly was that you don't come home after cleaning your job site and walk in the door and go, why isn't this fucking house vacuumed?
Yeah.
So you can
That's it.
imagine how well that went down. So I did have to learn that the hard way. So,
Mm.
but I learned how to pick my battles and laugh off the mess. But
Yeah.
what my wife and I did, we actually taught each other how to do the compartmentalize that.
Yeah.
And we actually use this technique where we would take 5 minutes out or 10 minutes out before when I would come home,
Mm.
and we would put it all in a compartment. We would actually just stop and have a chat
Mm.
and go. I'd say what happened today. She'd say what happened today, and then we'd go rightio. Well, let's move on to being a family. So, but that and it didn't. It wasn't always harmonious.
Mm.
There was ups and downs with all of that, but that was in those early phases of being a young parent and trying to provide for the family and run a business.
Mm.
That was one of the hard ways I had to learn is about just got to accept the mess. You can't control everything at home like you can on site.
Absolutely,
Mm,
man. I think one of the powerful things you can do, going back to leadership and mindset and how important mindset is for success, and this is relevant to peak performance and
mm,
optimization, all the stuff we normally talk about, making money, optimizing
mm,
profit, cash flow, workflow, is where you direct your attention. Right? Like
mm.
it's about, especially in this day and age, about attention management, not so much time management, but
Yeah,
especially when you're going through a difficult time, whether it's divorce, finance, death, that sort of thing,
yeah,
because where focus goes, energy flows.
for
Right? So
sure.
that's a that's
Totally,
a
totally
steal
believe in that.
a
Yeah.
Tony Robbins phrase. So you can, if you're going through heavy shit, like we do have the ability as emotional creatures to make it worse. To just
Hmm.
keep focusing on the negative, whether it's finances is a good example. There's no money in the
Hmm.
bank. I'm not making any money, and then you can just make it this almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy
Hmm.
versus asking an intelligent question. And Tony Robbins, like, and I did this, man, and I'd encourage anyone to do it. Depending on your mental and emotional state, just be careful. But he raises a question like when you're going through something difficult.
Hmm.
I know you've had some real challenges, as has everyone. I think no one has exclusivity on, pain and suffering. We all experience
Absolutely.
it to a certain
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah.
His question is, what's good about this?
Oh, that's
Right.
interesting.
So
Yeah.
I asked that question when my dad passed away.
Mm.
While I was in the midst, I remember it. I remember sitting there, and it was almost like it was comical to me. I
Mm.
was like, this is just the most what's the term for like oxymoron, the exact opposite of what, it just didn't make sense to be asking a question because your brain's like, there's nothing good about this, right?
Hmm.
And then I did it again, my last divorce. Like, what is good
Mm.
about this?
Yeah.
And fuck me, there is good. There
Mm.
is good, right? Like,
Mm.
so if we look at my divorce situation for a second, it was
Yeah. What was the when you ask yourself that question related to your
yeah,
divorce,
yeah.
what did you come up
So
with?
you've got to go past the initial reaction, which is fuck, like there's nothing. There is zero good about this, right?
Mm.
Especially like in my, I got divorced, raped as well. Like like financially it was like a 70-30 split or whatever. But when I was like, no, like I'm gonna follow this guy's advice, and I'm not gonna stop thinking. And I spent about half an hour just sitting there. I remember it was in a quiet space in my office, and then it was like, hey, I'm gonna learn something here.
Yeah.
Right? So I made a decision because it was a pending divorce. It was about to go. So I'm gonna seek out the best advice that I can, not in Australia, like in the world. Who's the number one relationship expert I can find on the planet? I'm gonna drop money. I went to multiple, some 500 US an hour,
Mm.
and I'm gonna apply myself fully. You know what I mean? I'm gonna find out what is their process solution. I'm gonna follow that solution to the best of my ability. And I'm gonna take those learnings and have a full crack at
Mm.
trying to fix this thing and
Mm.
repair it, right? And then I realized if I do that, if it doesn't
That's,
work out,
yep.
I
Yep.
will be able to walk away going, you know what? I fucking had a full, I gave it everything I did. Okay.
Right.
So there's kids involved. I've got two daughters, right? With
Mm.
my second wife. And so I did that, and I learned a shit ton about
How,
myself and introspection, and yeah.
yeah, how did you, what, can I ask, what were the biggest sort of self-reflection or emotional things? Because that's pretty
The,
honest and confronting thing
yeah.
that I think a lot of people aren't brave enough to
Mm.
ask of themselves. How did you go with that?
There's a couple of things. One of them was life changing, like
Mm.
absolutely. So I sought out this specialist in the US. He was a doctor. He'd written books. He was on YouTube, a YouTube channel. I
Mm.
tried to get an appointment with him, and it was I think, 500 or 700 US an hour. They were like, no chance. He's booked out. It was like March,
Mm.
like September.
All right.
But there's a waiting list. So I went on the waiting list, and then a couple of months later, they called me or sent me an email. I said, "Hey, he's got an opening. Do you want it?
Mm.
You need to let us know within, immediately." So I
Yep.
took it. I had two sessions with this guy, and he was worth every cent. He was so like, and it's a Zoom call, right? This guy was so
Yeah.
engaged. He was asking me questions and then just like looking into my soul. And then
Wow.
he gave me some insights which completely changed my life, like totally. But and there's lots of different things. But if I had to give you one to answer your
Yeah.
question, it was about exploring my antithesis. So I've got a certain view of what's happening, and often like
Oh,
life's not
yeah.
fair. Like shit happens to you. It's not fair. Like you've had people betray you, steal from
Hmm.
you. Like how can you look at that scenario in any other way than like I've been betrayed. I've been,
Mm.
harmed in some
Mm.
way, whether it's
Yeah.
physically, financially, whatever. But it was to really go deep in looking at their things from their perspective and the
Right.
opposite of what. So what do I believe? What's my view? Now do a 180 on that. And
Mm.
what that did is it helped me develop empathy,
And
compassion,
compassion. Right.
understanding. And then, so if the way it played out in my divorce is I look at my ex-wife, and then any guy that's been through a divorce, like it just, like in the Western world, there's no incentive for them to behave well, right? And it's an
Mm.
emotional thing. So obviously, like they're going through their own thing, and then things get said or done or whatever. But I was able to see her behavior,
Mm.
um, look at her behavior through that
Mhm.
lens of empathy and compassion, and realize like she's scared, frightened, uncertain about where things are going. So I
Yeah.
was able to respond very differently, and as a result, like I set a goal. This is going back to what's good about this. I was like, I can demonstrate to my daughters
Mm.
um, that this doesn't have to be a painful, like horrible situation. And like we all know, people have been through the divorce where it just drags on forever. I mentioned the term, divorce rape, and then the only people that make money are the lawyers and all that. So I went through
Yeah.
the whole divorce, no lawyers.
Hmm.
So financial settlement, care arrangements. I paid $500 to a lawyer for him to give me the truth of the
Hmm.
situation. Once I knew that, I knew how it was going to play out. I
Yep.
had to pay for the lodgement of the documents or whatever else with the
Mm.
courts. But my goal, my single-minded goal was for my daughters who are now just started high school. when they were in their 30s and they speaking to friends where they go, oh, my parents got divorced, which is like half the people you'll meet now, right? I
Yeah.
wanted them to go, and when they're going to hear a horror story at some point, someone's going to go, "Oh, you won't believe what." I mean, we hear them
Mm.
every day, right? What happened
Sure.
and the
Yeah.
nasty things they said about each other, whatever else. I want my daughters to go, you know what? My parents went through divorce, but I don't remember it being like that outrageous. Like, obviously, it's uncomfortable, and they've said to me,
Yeah.
like, they wish they had their parents living under the same roof.
Mm.
Fortunately, my parents didn't divorce, so
Yeah.
I'll never know what that's like to have to go
Yeah.
to different homes. But
Likewise.
beyond that, there,
How that
yeah,
that did you translate that from that moment, that learning? Have you carried that into other aspects of your life, be it business?
absolutely, and that's the
That's
what's
why it
good
was
about.
so significant. Yeah.
I'm like, let me just say, man, like this has been it's been a little while now, right? Since I went through what's it, nearly 5 years. But one of the hardest things I've done in my
Mm.
life, right? And
Mm.
doing difficult things like that and testing, you know, everything you stand for and your view on things, and
Mm.
then, exploring the opposite. Um, yeah, I came out, I believe, a better person and definitely able to use that, have been able to use in other situations.
Yeah.
Like having that
That's
ability
awesome, mate.
to, yeah, so put it this way, any
Mm.
other relationship challenge that I've dealt with since then has been easy by comparison.
Mm.
Because there's not as much emotion and everything. I mean, there's finance, there's kids, there's the
Yeah.
actual relationship, there's nothing you're going to deal with on a business front that's going to be, that packed with emotion.
No.
Although they say like,
Well, I don't know about that.
yeah, I was
God,
going to say
because
business relationship, like a business partnership, they say is actually more than a marriage sometimes. Yeah.
well, I think the emotional aspect of delivering a project is huge. Like builders care deeply about what they're doing. And when something starts to go astray in the relationship with the client, and the client starts making accusations and saying you're this and saying you're that, and I know that happens. I talk to my clients and we're trying to help them through messy scenarios in the midst of a contract, and it turns personal and ugly
Yeah.
and irrational, and it's deeply hurting and stressful to
No, you're right.
copying that when you're sitting there just trying to do your best for this individual. So, and then,
It can be tough, but
maintaining a compassionate
they
approach, actually, if anything, is probably going to help to um, diffuse the emotion from their side
yes,
rather
yes.
than reacting and putting fuel on it. I don't know. I think it probably would more likely to anyway, wouldn't you think?
100%, man. Like
Yeah.
it's, and we've actually got a tool if we're going to go into business speak and talk about
Mm.
what we do help, which is like a client collaboration agreement where the
Mm.
builders add contract sign and explain to the client all the things that have come up during the job, and we're going to run the job according to the
Right.
contract. And
Mm.
and when clients get angry, it's often because there's variations. The builder didn't communicate it because they're so busy trying to deliver the job, and then they get hit with these
Mm.
invoices right at the end. And yes, there's a clause for variations in the contract, but they don't read the contract because they sent it to a lawyer, or if they did read it, they can't remember. And then
Yeah,
they
yeah,
get
yeah.
upset.
Okay.
And then the builder's like, this person's a dick, and they owe me money. You know what I mean? You get this emotional
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
backlash and this
yeah.
conflict. But really, when you think about it, from the builder's perspective, who's using my approach.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, this person feels blindsided. Like
Mm.
it wasn't communicated well enough to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that's obviously a tricky situation. And
Mm.
we tell our clients, day one, if they're not already using it, to have
Mm.
something like that in place
Yeah.
to avoid that. But
Uh,
yeah, that's a good example.
I know you and I have not chatted previously about any of these approaches prior to this, right? But
Mm.
you're talking about that compassionate approach that you learned through that session. It's interesting. It's actually how I try and live my life with compassion as the first emotion that I throw back, and I learned that from my father. Like I had a great relationship with my father, but man, like I tell you, talk about hardship, because I was raised in this Christian cult, right?
Tell
And
us about that because I'm sure
it
everyone's like
was
leaning forward right there. Christian
it
cult.
was it was a really intense, like if you're in the community, and my youth and my upbringing was this sort of um, warm, fuzzy community labored layered on with a whole shitload of judgment,
Yeah.
right? So, and actually, interesting enough, there's change.org has got a petition running right now to raise funds to try and can't close this particular church down because it's still running.
What's it
But they
called?
would, the church is called Christian Fellowship Organisation, CFO. And there's
Yeah.
Brisbane Christian Fellowship, and Brisbane's the main head of it. If anyone wants to donate money, but to an organisation that's going to stop people doing horrible things in people's
Yeah,
lives,
shut that shit down, man. Yeah.
because this particular church, they're a church, so they don't pay any taxes. They get funding for stuff. They take taxes. They take money from the congregation. But then what they do is, if you don't fit in line with the wording or the belief system of the organisation, then the church will excommunicate you, divide your family. And they tried to do that
It's
to us because my
just a
dad was the
form of
preacher.
control.
Yeah,
They're
it's
just
total
controlling people.
manipulation.
Yeah.
And my dad was the leader of the Toowoomba branch, and he stood up for a young family in the church that had a child out of wedlock, and that just started to snowball this attack on him. And then they tried to separate me from my family, and they tried to split us up, and they told lies just in order to defend their righteousness, I guess.
So what was he doing to defend them? So they had a kid out of wedlock.
Well, he married them.
So he
He
married
stood,
them.
he stood up for them. The
Uh,
church wanted to remove the child from the family
ooh,
and separate them. Yeah, and
take the kid off them because they weren't married.
put the child with a good, people, role model Christian
Take the kid
family.
away from their parents because
Yeah,
they hadn't been married before they had the kid.
how screwed up is that? So
Yeah.
my dad stood up for them, married them, and then that started the spiral of attack and division that they tried. But luckily, we got out of it as a family, okay. But even after all that horrible nastiness, right? That my dad had a heart attack, and he there was no remittance payments or anything for him. He just got left high and dry financially as well. And even after all that, my dad's approach was just love and compassion, love and compassion. Is how he responded his way through that. So
Mm.
I learned so much from that. And
That's
I do try and
incredible.
bring that forward into um, a lot of the aspects in my life. I wish I had have remembered that when I came home and thought the floors needed a clean. It might have helped,
Yeah.
but
No,
I did have
definitely.
to keep falling back on it as a approach to life and business, and it has helped me a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely. But hey, how's this? When that was happening with your dad, so that
Mm,
that couple, because that's illegal, right? You can't just take someone's kid away just because they're not married. It's just like
mm.
absurd, right? It's
Yep.
crazy town stuff you're
That's what
talking
they were
about there.
suggesting. Split them up and
Yeah, but so
yeah.
when your dad was being attacked, that would have been brutal for him and then
Mm,
for your family.
hmm.
But in hindsight, that was your exit out of that
Yeah, that's right.
cult.
So
So
there's
this is where
that
there's
silver
always a
lining.
silver lining, right? Like,
Yeah, right.
what is good about this? Well, you're often not going to
Mm.
see it in the moment, but
No.
I'll just believe, like, I'll just have this belief that things are happening for my good, right? So I'm either I win
Yeah.
or I learn. If I look back on my life, as you connect the dots going backwards, often something negative happens. Maybe you want to buy a property, you don't get it. You really, really, really want it, but then there's something better comes along. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Down the
mm,
track, you're like, oh shit, just as well I didn't
mm.
get that one. Could be a thing
Yeah.
like that, or it could be a relationship, and how often do you hear that?
Mm.
Where something there's a painful experience, but then it leads to something better.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I am
That can
celebrate
help
that.
as well with not like someone who's going through pain now. Just, hey, there's something better around the corner. And
Yeah.
just believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was in my early 20s when that all spiraled out. I didn't know who I was because my whole identity was based on this faith doctrine. So I really had to rediscover myself, and I didn't get it right. It took me a long time at that period of my life. And I really did actually feel alone because I was excommunicated. My whole network and community and friends were in that. And so I was suddenly out on my own, and I'm like, woohoo, I'm Hayden. But I was a bit of a dick for a while there. But there was a silver lining. I did get out. Taught me a lot. Took me a long time to learn from what the lessons were in that one because I was pretty angry for a while. But yeah, it all takes everything takes you somewhere, right? Everything takes you somewhere, no matter
Absolutely. Yeah.
what it is you're in. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the most important thing going back to leadership mindset is to take ownership, be accountable, take responsibility where you can.
Mm-hmm.
Because we do have a victim mentality on this planet at the moment where
Mm-hmm.
victims get elevated, right? So there's people that sort of stay in that space, and that's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
If because often and like I can tell you now from that community that I was in with the divorce thing, the
Yeah.
number of guys that were like, oh, she cheated on me, she this, she
It's
this, she
angry. Yeah.
angry and just screaming and shouting like through and
Mm.
like the victim mentality. And I was like, hey man, like we all know like there's things you can do to prevent that? Or what were you doing? Like what sort of husband were you? Even if it was you maybe working too hard or
Mm-hmm.
not giving someone the right attention. I'm not saying sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissists, people with borderline personality or disorder don't exist. Those are rare. So
Mm.
that's a different thing. But then again, you can still take responsibility for, well, why did I end up in a relationship with someone like that? How could I miss the red flags? Because if you look
Yeah.
back, if that's someone going, hey, but she was crazy, legitimately diagnosed crazy, then how did you miss the red flags? You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
and often it'll be like, yeah, I saw the red flags, but she was pretty or whatever else. So
Mm.
there's always, yeah, just taking ownership, taking responsibility, take the lesson, carry it forward, and then things just keep getting better.
Yeah. The other aspect to this is, and those are total, I totally agree with you there on that. They're the lessons, the silver linings there. The other aspect, and kind of, I think what we also want to touch on today is when you are in the trenches there, where you're ankle deep in concrete or whatever the analogy you want to use is, there's still something happening in your life that's that's dependent upon you. So it might be your kids are still dependent upon you. It might be the job site is still requires you. You've still got to function some way or another, right? And that's
Mm.
hard. That's another hard when you're actually in the hard stuff to know and still be functional and still lead the people that are around you that need your support. And
Yeah, and
I
that's
think,
brutal. Yeah, I don't want to make light of how tough things can be. Like if you're
yeah,
dealing with relationship pressure, and financial pressure, like it can be absolutely freaking brutal.
it's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you need a philosophy. So what we've been sharing is our philosophy, which
yeah.
over time we weren't born with it. It's like, okay, I'm gonna win or learn. There's gonna
Mm-hmm.
be a silver lining. I know that there always is, right? Doesn't matter what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a sort of philosophy for life. Um, Another thing is like there's a process solution. So
Mm-hmm.
what's sort of the process solution for dealing with this? And let's look at it like an extreme example. I had a guy talking about this the other day. Like I know people that, they've had, family death, suicide, sibling commit suicide, whatever it is. And, they get diagnosed with cancer at the same time while they're in financial pressure. And it just feels like it's too much. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so the process solution there, that this guy was sharing with me was, and there's a term for it, I forget what it's called, but it's what do I need to do? He wakes up in the morning, with you know, dealing with three or four heavy things. One of them alone would be enough for most people
Mm-hmm.
to feel like, what do I do? Three or four of them, which some people do just get slammed. He's like, what do I need to do today to get through today?
Right.
I
Yeah.
need to have break. I need to eat. And
Mm-hmm.
they got this from POWs, Second World War. There was guys that spent 4 or 5 years, I think, in Japanese, prisoner of war camps. And the guys that were like, hey, it's like, May, June, we're going to get out by Christmas. At Christmas, we're going to be having, dinner with our families. Everything's going to be okay. They all died. So the
Mm.
guys that had all that hopeful thinking, because Christmas came and went and they were still there.
Mm.
The guys that survived were the guys that woke up and said, what do I need to do to make it through to tonight? And they
Mm.
took one day at a time and they just went through one day, one day, one
Mm.
day. So
Yeah.
that's just having like so what's your philosophy? How are you going to choose to look at the situation? One,
Mm.
two, what's the process solution? How are you going to get through it?
Yeah.
Some people it's from 1 hour to the next. I know people with addictions, they have a process, right? A
Mm.
12 step. process solution.
Mm.
Um, sorry, did
Yeah.
you want to say something?
No, no, I'm just agreeing. I feel hearing you there and feel for people that are in that situation. And if just make it clear, we're not experts in this. If this is triggering for somebody, if anyone's feeling that situation themselves personally, reach out to Lifeline, Beyond Blue. There's resources there. Make a call, right?
Yeah, even to
Um,
us, we can
yeah,
help point.
even
Like
to
I've got,
us.
yeah, I can point the guys to
Yep.
some of the coaches and mentors that I
Mm,
used. And again, I'm a bit of a
yep.
junkie. Like you've got to go through
Yeah.
kiss a few frogs to find the real quality people out there, but
Yeah.
they do exist. There's
Yeah.
some phenomenal people out there, and
Yeah.
we can tap into it. But
Yeah.
um,
I
mm,
think I was going to sort of can relate to, we had a family tragedy. My sister-in-law took her own life about just coming up to about a year ago. Pretty horrible. And I'd sort of I had to drop things at work. I had to go over to America, visit my brother, hang out, and just help him through. It was pretty hardcore, really hardcore,
oh
heavy
man,
stuff.
yeah,
Um, ah, Still get emotional. But I've got a really good mate who is a family relationship guy. Um, and he just gave me a little bit of wisdom that really helped me through. And that was just be honest with everybody with what you're doing, what you're dealing with. There's no point in sort of trying to cover it up or gloss it over because it's real. You don't have to tell everyone the full juicy details of it all, but just be honest was his first tip. So I let everybody in my team, I let my clients know, dealing with a family tragedy, and everybody understood. So that was the first thing. It relieved a bit of pressure on the work
mm,
front. The other cherry of advice that was really valuable is I was going in to support, even though there was grieving involved for myself, I was really going in to support my brother and my nephews, really, in that pretty heavy moment. The other cherry of advice that I really held on to, and it made a big difference, was I went in to support them, but I had my own goal each day. So just like you're saying there, those guys that survived the prisoner of war camp, I actually had a goal each day. And my goal that I set myself was simply to walk for 20 minutes a day, no matter what was going on in the support that was required. Um, I just had my own goal was just to do my own little thing a day, 20 minutes a day, just get out, go for a walk on my own. And it made a difference because it just helped me just find my own, clear my head and get out and be fresh rather than just being pulled into the weight of that situation constantly. So I can relate. It's not even a year ago that I was in that scenario, and it was actually in January when I was dealing with that. So yeah, hopefully
mm.
one step at a time, set
Yeah.
little
Well,
goals
that
for yourself, and be honest. Just be honest, because people do understand. They do care.
absolutely. It comes back to like no one has exclusivity
Mm.
on a difficult time. Everyone goes through
Yeah,
something really tough at some point.
yeah.
Um, but I like that approach you took going for a walk. Like I found for myself, it's just keeping busy. Like off the back of my divorce, took about 7 months to go through that grieving process,
Hmm.
similar to my dad passed. But I would book in things like exercise, go for a run in the morning, um,
Hmm.
really taking care of myself,
Yeah.
both mentally, emotionally, physically. I had a mindfulness practice. I had a morning routine. Do that, like because you wake up some mornings, you don't like there's just emotions and thoughts racing
Hmm.
through your head. So it's like, okay, what's the process? I'm gonna do this. You know, take my. I had like a gratitude exercise. Write 10 things down. Use my opposite hand. I'm left-handed, so I use my right hand. So
Mm.
just doing that, and then my pre-workout mix, and then I'm clearing my inbox, and then I'm running 5Ks, and then I'm jumping in the
Mm.
ocean, which was great. And I came out, and then I was like there was the agenda was set for every day
Mm.
and every week. And that's just for me, like that structure and me not having to think, just follow the steps,
Yeah.
worked really well.
I
But
think some people, you got to acknowledge though, for some people, that the depths of what they might be feeling, uh, just whatever the simple task they set for themselves is enough. You know, that's, do five K and runs and swims is awesome. A 5 minute walk around the
yeah,
block is
exactly.
another start because that's actually what I did that with my
Anything.
brother. I did that
anything,
with my
right?
brother. I
Yeah,
tried to set him on a path, and the path was literally a walk around the block, and it's not a big block.
yeah,
And that was the challenge that I set for him.
yeah.
But for me personally, and on a business level, I learned something that came out of that because it was had to drop it, run, manage the business. Luckily, I've got a bit of a team, so that was good. But it it taught me something about leadership that output um, you can create output and efficiency with compassion, right? Because by showing that you needed compassion and understanding that others require compassion, it created this level of trust and it gave my team the ability to step up, and it changed the relationship with some of my team because it sort of just became a bit more human.
Mm,
Um, so, care and accountability can coexist. And
mm,
that was something incredibly valuable I got out of that. It just sort of spun out of it.
mm,
And the relationship and the responsibility and the ownership that my team took through that grew,
mm.
which was one of the business side positives that I saw out of that period.
Fantastic, man. Yeah, it's compassion. I just want to touch on that for a sec because showing compassion for someone who's just caused you a significant amount of pain, I found that quite challenging, but it was very transformative, right?
Hmm.
But something else that came out of my work that I did with some really good coaches, and I'm keen to hear your take on this, is compassion for self.
Mm,
Because I found that um, through this therapy, whatever you want to call it, that I went through, that I was not being very compassionate towards myself.
mm,
And now I've since discovered most of us aren't. Most of
mm,
us are absolutely fucking brutal, like to
mm.
ourselves. Think of that inner critic in your
Yeah,
head and how you can
yeah.
beat yourself up, especially for someone that's going through financial difficulty and then going back to your situation where you're working hard and there wasn't much money there. And I'm
Mm,
keen to hear, like, if you experienced any of that, like, what was your level of self-compassion? Did you have any awareness around that? And what about self-doubt? Because
mm,
I know, like in the early stages, for younger guys listening, you start questioning yourself, like, am I
mm,
cut out for this? Can I do this? And everyone else looks like they're really successful, especially in the day and age where everyone's on social media. Everything's amazing. Look at my holidays. And they, yeah. Meanwhile, if you scratch beneath the surface, everyone's dealing with shit at some
mm,
level.
mm.
So how did you deal with that self-compassion and self-doubt?
Oh boy, well, self-doubt still rings through, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
it's still something that flares its ugly head from time to time. That's actually a spin-off of growing up in a cult, is where I see it
No, but
comes from
I'm
because
glad you said that
judgment.
because I have the same thing. And I
Yeah.
listened to Eddie Jones, who coached the England's team. He's got a
Mm,
friend who owns an English football club, and every day the guy wakes up feeling
mm.
with self-doubt, like he's going to lose everything. And that's what drives a lot of these
I
billionaires.
know, I know. It's a real thing. Like, and we both run businesses that where we're supporting each other and you're trying to provide service to people, and sometimes you doubt yourself whether you got it right or whether you're
Mm,
doing it as best you can. It's still a thing that I have to deal with. Um, but what if anything that I've learned to look at, and then on the other aspect of it was like coming out of that cult environment through my 20s, but I was pretty destructive to myself, right? In that early phase, I was really quite, got partied pretty hard and then wasn't really facing my emotions or dealing with that. I was just angry, right? So it's probably a grieving type
This in your 20s,
response.
early
In my
20s.
20s, yeah,
And
in
your
my early 20s.
testosterone would have been surging. So,
Yeah,
I mean, most of us go through a bit of a,
yeah,
party phase in the 20s. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So like but sort of trying to draw a bit of a comparison between the young guys that are listening, the young tradies, young builders are trying to build up, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't really till I started to just think bigger and think beyond the myself and think beyond the moment that I'm in, that I started to get a bit more perspective on things. And
Mhm.
as I broadened my um, compassion for um, my future and the future of the people around me, I think it started to let me reflect a little bit more about how I was acting and how I was coping. Um, I think that's kind of was a turning point, probably in my mid to late 20s, where I started to click in that it wasn't just about me, and it wasn't everyone. It's naturally you go through that, you grow and you try to cope, you try to party, you testosterone, all that sort of stuff. But if you ask that question, it was when I just started to be more aware of the impact of my life in the future and the impact of the people around me and how I'm impacting their future as well. So it comes back to that compassion thing, I guess. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I find that that's really important. A lot of people don't realize that they're beating themselves up. So you got to, like,
Mm,
we've all done dumb shit. And I
mm,
think it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. That's how you learn. Like, you've got to
yeah.
do some things that maybe you're not proud of, or
Yeah.
when you take a wrong turn to figure out what the right path is. But then it's not, yeah, you got to forgive yourself and not beat yourself up. And
Hmm.
and then build that knowledge, understanding. That's how you get wisdom,
Yeah.
and compassion for other people as well.
Yeah.
Younger people.
Yeah.
But resilience
Yeah.
as well. Like, you've been through like an unbelievable journey. Like, it's some heavy things, and you've come out the other end. Would you say you're more resilient because of what you've been through, or has it softened you up a bit?
Uh, s- I think I'm resilient, but at the same time, I'm a super softy. Oh my goodness, I'm a deeply emotional. God, it doesn't take much for me to feel emotion and show it. Sometimes it
Mm.
can be a bit embarrassing, but I've just learned how to deal with that. I just accept that. But but yeah, I'm just grateful for every experience I've had, be they hard or positive. Mostly it's all positive, right? Because positive has come. I feel like I've got a really wonderful life. I've got a beautiful family. I've got a good business and good relationships with my clients and staff. So ultimately, I'm really happy and positive with the outcome of everything.
Yeah.
Um, so the resourcefulness of it, yeah, I don't really think about that as a
But also,
resilience. Yeah.
how good is it that you are able to fly to the US to be with your brother and still keep things functional back at home? Because
Yes.
that says a whole lot as well.
Well,
Like,
the support of a great woman, my beautiful wife and business partner, Adrian,
mhm,
absolutely supporting and that. And luckily that my business now is not a site-based business. That's another very fortunate thing that I'm very thankful for, being doing what we do at Price Plan, being all pretty much online. So yeah,
yeah,
but yeah, very, very lucky. Yeah.
fantastic, man. I'm just thinking of any like sort of key takeaways. If someone did want some real structure or process for dealing with a difficult situation, what are some key points or takeaways that you'd give to anyone listening who's going through a tough time at the moment?
Um, I think when you're in the middle of a storm, it's hard to remember that storms are just going to fly over, but things do pass.
Yeah.
They always do pass. Um, that's probably the one key takeaway. That'd be one thing I'd say.
Yeah.
The other thing is there's resources there at your fingertips, and one step towards somewhere
Hmm.
is a step. So whether that's downloading a podcast, I know you were talking. Were you talking with Hamish from the Mindful Builder?
Yes. Had a chat to him on Monday.
Yeah, yeah. So like that's a fantastic industry related podcast that's about mindfulness and the issues that builders face. There's a great resource.
Yeah.
Lean into those resources.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and then just know it will pass and just take one step because every step takes you somewhere. As simple as that might sound, but that's sort of my tips that I could give people. And then internally, I mean, another fun thing, we're starting the push-up challenge. That's a national campaign at the moment that's running around Australia. So we're starting that within our company, and
Hmm.
within our company, well, my whole team's on board.
What does that look
So
like? What's involved with that?
the push-up challenge is a fundraising thing where you raise money and over 23 days you try and accomplish 3,214 push-ups is what your goal is to
Over how many
achieve
days?
over 23 days.
So it's let me just do the math here.
Over the
3,200
Yeah, as an individual. What's that equate to per day?
divided by 23 days. That's
Yeah,
139 a day, 140
that's a fair.
push-ups.
That's going to be a fair bit for
You
some
have to break
some
it up.
people,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's a per day challenge.
Mm.
And what Pricer Plan has done with our team is we're
Mm.
going to contribute as an accumulative total. So it's not individuals within the team. As a cumulative company total, we're going to donate 20 cents per push up.
Mm.
So that's what we're doing. But it's about, yes, giving money to a really worthwhile charity. It's about suicide in Australia and overcoming it. But
Yeah.
it's also creating a discussion point amongst everybody.
Yeah.
Um, and from the website, the Push Up Challenge website, it says, the people that have engaged in it last year said that 94% of people that involved felt that it helped their mental well-being because it opened up discussions by the fact that we're doing push-ups, we're doing this for mental health. Cool. How's your mental health? Yeah, good. How's yours? Not too good today. But
Yeah.
you're just using a practical tool to start a discussion. So
Fantastic.
that's
Nice.
another thing. So there's stuff out there, right?
Yeah.
Just
No.
look, take steps.
Yeah, and that's also like lends itself to community, right? Like just find there's lots of online communities out there.
Mm,
You can jump on like YouTube's got a lot of different things that can lead into some quality communities. And we live in a world where reviews, you can check reviews and who's legit and who's not,
yeah.
and who's following sort of first principles thinking, which
Mm,
which is powerful. But just what you said there before when I asked you like what are your tips for dealing with difficult situation, and you're saying, the storm's gonna pass, right? Like it's gonna
yeah.
things get heavy. I find that true for emotions as well. Like
Right.
when I was younger, I used to feel emotions very strongly. And then sometimes, whether it's anger or anxiety or even the positive emotions like excitement, whatever, just know that all of them have to peak at some point.
Yeah.
It's you know, fear, whatever you're feeling, like it has to peak and then it comes back down. So it
Yeah.
will eventually pass because it
Yeah.
can be frightening if you're feeling something and it feels like this is it, like it's just going to keep escalating.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to know.
Yep.
And what was the just moving across to relationships again,
Yeah.
wives, any young guys listening, like selecting a partner, like you mentioned Adrian, and how she's
Mm,
obviously got your back, and having
mm,
the right woman in your life is huge. I think, you hear people saying it's the single most important decision a man can make, right?
mm. Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I've only had one life partner, and so far so good.
Yeah.
Uh,
But then once you've got someone like you have, right? And I have now as well,
mhm.
with Jess, you need to put effort in, right? You think of the time and effort and thought and that everything that goes into your business. You need to allocate some of that thought and energy and time into like date nights and
Yeah.
keeping the relationship. The relationship needs nurturing. You don't just meet someone, marry them, and then that's it. Now I can just
Yeah.
okay, now I've got you, and now we can just focus on work. It doesn't work
Yeah.
that way. Yeah, you need
No, no.
to
So you've got to treat your relationship like a job site task.
like
If
a
you have
business,
to,
like another whole business. And your
if you
kids as
have to,
well. Each of them are like
schedule
another
it.
whole business. Yeah.
Schedule it.
Yeah, yeah. And
Date
that's
night,
scheduling in. Yeah.
date night, shower, bit of nookie. Hopefully, you
Absolutely. That just
hopefully,
does wonders. Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
But also guys, like as men, and this is what I learned from going through these communities when I was going through my divorce, is we
Mm,
impact Right. I mean, it makes perfect sense. Like if you look at gender roles, traditional gender roles, and the world was very different in the 1950s to it is now, but we're still like there's an inertia that goes with that. 80, we have 80% of what happens in terms of relationship dynamic, success, and outcome
Yeah.
is affected by us. The things that we both do and don't do. So
Mm.
there's often guys that
Interesting.
are in the victim space and this happened to me, but then what weren't you doing? Like they weren't booking in, scheduling date nights, they weren't trying to
Mm.
connect and do things, and then you wonder why your partner maybe goes somewhere else or whatever it is. But
Yeah. Yeah.
not to
Yeah.
say that so I'm not talking from personal experience here, but I just saw that. I saw a lot of that, and it was like, and then they can't see how maybe they were part of the problem. If you can't see that, then it's going to repeat itself in another
Yeah.
relationship. So select
Yeah.
wisely, most important decision, and then put the effort in to keep it alive, right? Keep that
Yeah.
flame going, and
Yeah.
then life's a beautiful thing. Then you got someone like you have to go through those ups and downs, and I've
Mm.
experienced that now with Jess, where like I've seen her do things where I was like, wow. Like I've literally said to her, no one's ever done that for me before. Like the
Mm.
level of support, like I've got your back. And without it's just actions speak louder than words, like you would have experienced, like with that yeah,
Yeah.
tragedy with
That's so
your
good for you, mate.
sister-in-law. And they just
Yeah.
step in and like, no, I've got you.
Mm.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It is really awesome. Yeah. Well, I hope that I appreciate you raising the topic. It's could talk for ages about it, and would love to loop around and bring other people into it because
Mm.
um, it's good to talk, right? It's good to talk about things like this and be honest and sincere and be real about what the requirements are for, as men and as leaders in the industry.
Yeah.
It's not all business and profit and loss sheets, is it?
No, we're human beings, we're people. And I think like
Mm,
men don't talk about this sort of stuff enough. So this is like long
mm,
overdue, right? um,
mm.
Women tend to rally around each other. Like, have a look at
Yeah.
what happens when a woman goes through a breakup or
Mm,
difficulty or challenge. Like, even
yeah.
people that don't really know that, that's their natural instinct
Hmm.
immediately to go and show support, to talk about it, and then they let it all out, right? They turn,
Mm, mm.
some of us think, oh, they're more emotional. They're letting it all out. They're talking about it. We do the opposite. We go into a cave. We're by ourselves. We're isolated. Push those emotions down deep into the concrete, right?
Yeah.
Bury those things.
Yeah.
So I think, like, and look, I'm not saying men should just start opening up and being like women because that's not going to be the solution either. Like
Sure.
we do have a different way of processing things, but we're probably not talking about it enough. And the
Yeah.
statistics and results speak for themselves. You don't need to suffer in silence. The world is changing. And
Mm.
yeah, man, I reckon we could have another whole podcast, yeah, because you're right, we could just keep going. We haven't even like scratched the surface. Like if we really went through like our histories and then all the things we know and the people, like the stories would be absolutely freaking endless.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's just us. Imagine if we loop in some other people
Yeah,
as well. Yeah. But
exactly.
also look out for others too, right? So be aware of what's
Yeah.
going on with your crew and your site and be sensitive to them. I think that as men as well, like using something physical like a push-up challenge is a good icebreaker to get people opening up and talking. Especially apprentices, like those statistics related to suicide, like those dangerous bracket of that is young tradies and young apprentices.
Mm.
They're the ones that actually have the highest susceptibility to losing their life to that.
Yeah.
So, you know, even though we're talking about individually what people could be going through and ways or techniques or ideas about how we've coped with it. I think it's also about just taking that responsibility as a leader. Just
Yeah.
look at your team, try and create ways for discussion.
And
And
look at them with compassion. Like there's often cases where some guy's not performing, he's turning up late, he's being a dick. Like this guy's not
mm,
fucking doing what I'm paying him for. And
mm,
immediate response is, I want to come down on them. And I know guys have told me, I speak to a lot of builders where I've just filed into some guy.
mm,
And really, if the approach with compassion, like just first port of call, hey, is everything okay? Like, and they
mm,
find, oh, his girlfriend just broke up with him or something. The guy's
yeah,
going through a difficult time. So his behavior and lack of performance relates to this grievance in his life, right? So just
yeah,
maybe check in just in case, because a lot of the time, that's
mm,
the behavior is just a symptom of some other issue going on behind the scenes.
yeah,
And all you're going to do is put more pressure on the person, right?
yeah. It's so true. So very, very true. There's always a story behind what the behavior is presenting as.
Yeah, I bet a lot
Always
of
a
guys
story.
say that. Usually
Yeah,
older guys, been around the block a few times, realize, shit, let me just check in first, just make sure that there's not some other thing happening.
yeah.
But mate, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, good on you for raising the topic, mate, and opening it up. And it's
Yeah.
important. Let's just chat again. Always a
Yeah,
pleasure
for
to
sure.
chat
Maybe
to you, Kurt.
we'll launch another whole podcast off the
Yeah,
back of this. And yeah, I think it's important subject. So thank you.
yeah. And anyone that is listening, like they know, there's resources out there. But if anyone wants to call me, like, everyone can find my number pretty easily or email me. No problem. No problem.
Likewise.
So we'll,
Literally, I'll give my personal email, kurt@builderscoach.com.au, and anyone working with me, you got my number. Call me anytime of the day or
yeah,
night if you need to speak to someone.
yeah. Awesome. Well done, Kurt.
Fantastic, mate.